We would like to propose a way to speed up the search for the cure of brain cancer while slashing costs and improving safety. We'd like to start with brain cancer as a pilot program and, if successful, expand it to all types of incurable diseases. Brain cancer is the leading cause of cancer deaths in children aged 0 to 19. In addition to all the problems that you have with any type of cancer, brain cancer affects you in special ways. It affects your very being. It changes your personality, and most of the time it's for the worse. It changes your ability to communicate, to move, to take care of yourself, and most patients will never work again. The average survival is under 2 years, and the chances of surviving 5 years is only about 5%, and progress has been very slow compared to other types of cancer. This is a brain scan of one of my relatives. Look at the difference between the right half compared to the left half of that picture. This is a devastating disease. Why is the progress so slow? Brain cancer, again, has the same problems other incurable cancers have. Heterogeneity, which means the whole tumor is not exactly alike. There's some parts that are going to be sensitive to certain things, and other parts that are not sensitive to it but will be sensitive to something else. If you look at it as if it's all one type of tumor, you give it a drug that could kill 90% of it, you think that it's a winner, but those 10% that are remaining will regrow within a few weeks to a few months, and they'll be resistant to that treatment. So you have to have some kind of combination that will hit every single cell at the same time. There's acquired resistance to treatment and DNA repair mechanisms. Chemotherapy works by damaging DNA, and your body has different ways to repair DNA. If the body can repair the damage that chemotherapy does, the chemotherapy is going to have no effect. In addition, brain cancer has some unique problems. There's a blood-brain barrier that stops some treatments from getting to the tumor. So we have to work on different ways of getting treatments in. The skull encloses the brain in a tight enclosure, so any swelling has no place to go. It increases pressure within the skull, shutting off circulation, which can kill you. This is one of the reasons many patients die, is the increased pressure within the brain. And the entire brain is important. You can't just cut out or destroy wide margins without causing neurological problems. So, how do we speed up the search for the cure? Well, there are a few experimental treatments in the pipeline that have shown good safety, and in a small percentage of the patients, really amazing efficacy. The majority of brain cancer patients cannot get access to these right now. There are many researchers working on exciting treatments that work in the test tube and in animals, but most will never see human trials. Even if they did, most patients wouldn't get to use them for 5 to 10 years. The reason for this is money. It costs anywhere between $500 million to $1 billion to develop a drug from the idea stage to getting FDA approval. And it's very hard to convince people to put up that much money. It's a lot easier to convince people to put up that money if you're working on something that's very similar to a commercial success right now, but might add 2 to 3 weeks of survival. That's a safe drug, so people would feel comfortable investing in it. If you had a new idea that could possibly be a cure, but it's a new thing that has no track record, so the investors will be wary of it, you're going to have a lot of trouble trying to find financing for that. 3, it's likely that the ultimate cure will be a cocktail of a few treatments, possibly tailored to the individual patient. It is now just about impossible to try multiple combinations involving experimental therapies, with a few exceptions which I'll get into later. Most of the time, if you wanted to add 3 different experimental treatments together, you're not going to be able to do it. So we propose a new pathway to FDA approval, which will allow patients to get access to the experimental treatments now and allow the researcher to develop their treatments. So we're proposing conditional approval. This new pathway would allow approval of treatments for brain cancer much earlier than the current system. But we do not sacrifice research and safety. We're just moving it from before the approval to after approval. The requirements would be to show that it's as safe as currently approved treatments in at least 50 patients, and we would prefer that half of the patients be in brain cancer patients, since brain cancer patients have some additional problems that most other cancer patients don't have. And 2, be shown to have some biological activity, such as an improvement in a biomarker, brain scan, or an increase in progression-free or overall survival. We're not insisting on an increase in progression-free or overall survival because we're trying to get tools for our toolbox which will allow us to make up these combinations of treatments. So if a patient comes to us that overexpress 3 different markers that seem to be driving the tumor growth, we want to have the 3 different drugs that each hit those 3 markers, and then combining those 3 might show an increase in progression-free and overall survival. But each one by themselves probably won't show any difference in survival at all, because when you hit just one of these markers, the other two compensate, and you just have no chance of controlling the tumor with just that one treatment. That's why we're looking at these combinations. So, what is conditional approval? The treatment can be sold to patients just like any other FDA-approved treatment. Any doctor could prescribe it. Insurance companies cannot deny paying for them due to being experimental. They might not pay, just like they don't like to pay for any new drug, but they just can't use this excuse that it's experimental. All patients who use the conditional drug must participate in the registry for the duration of treatment. This is the key point of the whole entire project. I'll get more into it later. And patients must sign an informed consent form that acknowledges they understand this treatment was not tested completely, and they are willing to accept the risk in return for getting access to it. FDA review. The FDA will conduct reviews periodically, perhaps every 6 months. If this treatment looks like it is causing more side effects than is acceptable, they remove the conditional approval, and the drug may continue on the old pathways. If the drug is considered safe and effective, the FDA can upgrade the approval to a full approval. Otherwise, the conditional approval remains in place. We don't have to remove the conditional approval if it's not shown to be effective, because if it's not effective, the doctors just won't prescribe it, and it does no harm to actually just have it available as a tool if it is ever needed. Just by being available doesn't mean it's going to be used. There have been some precedents to conditional approval. The FDA already has conditional approval for treatment of cancer in animals. And the following countries have conditional approval pathways for cancer treatments: Japan, Canada, South Korea. In South Korea, the program was started 15 years ago, and they have approved 18 drugs this way. And out of those, only one had to be removed, and it was due to lack of efficacy, not a toxicity issue. There's a law in the federal regulations that says that the FDA can grant marketing approval for treatments after a phase 1 trial. So no new laws would have to be created for our conditional approval proposal. The Brain Tumor Virtual Trial Registry. This is the whole key to making this work. All patients using conditional treatments must participate, or they won't be able to refill their prescriptions. The doctors have to submit information to the registry on every visit, the treatments the patient is using, the outcome, and the side effects. It should only take a few minutes. It'll be a nice web-based or app-based form that they have to fill out. We will also collect as much of the genomic data as possible. And the database will be available without identifying information, of course, in a simple-to-use format to allow the oncologist to quickly see the risks and benefits of each of these treatments. The Brain Tumor Virtual Trial app. This is the coolest part of the whole proposal. We envision that you would enter the patient and tumor characteristics, such as you would check off different biomarkers if they have them, and then the app will display the results. It will show you all treatments in the database and all combinations used for this specific type of tumor narrowed down by those biomarkers, and available registry trials based on those biomarkers again. And then you could sort all of these in many different ways, such as the most effective, or least side effects, or even cost if that's an issue. I would love to have this tool available right now. There are a few possible treatments eligible for this pathway right now, and in addition, there's a lot of experimental treatments that haven't seen patients yet that could get started because of our pathway. The first one I'd like to talk about is VAL-083. This is a chemotherapy approved in China for leukemia. It's been used on over 1,000 patients with a good safety profile. They did a small trial in the worst of the worst glioblastoma patients. These are patients who had second or more recurrences after failing Avastin. With this group of patients, usually average survival is about 2 to 3 months with no treatment. Here they did a trial compared to the best of a few other trials, and they showed a significant increase in survival. This drug is similar to the current standard of care, which is Temodar, but it works in a different spot. With Temodar, about half the people, a little more than half the people have a repair enzyme that makes Temodar not work. That repair enzyme doesn't affect this drug. So in the 55% of the people who have an unmethylated MGMT marker, which means Temodar most likely will not help at all for them, this drug might be able to be a drop-in replacement and work just as good as Temodar does for the methylated MGMT patients. VC-Vax. This is a vaccine with a very good safety record. Basically, it's a shot in the arm, and the result you get is a small irritation at the site of injection, which is similar to what some people get with a flu shot. They followed people for a long time in a small study, and they report exceptionally high 4 and 6 year survival rates. Remember that I said 5% of the people achieved 5-year survival? They had a phase 1-2 trial where 33% of people met an overall survival median of 48 months. That's 4-year survival. And 27% exceeded 72 months, with 2 patients alive greater than 10 years. There are a handful of patients alive after 10 years out of the 20,000 or so that are diagnosed every year. So it's probably less than 1 in 1,000 to 1 in 10,000. To have 2 people in one small trial means that something's going on with this particular drug. This is another one that should have been approved immediately. ICT-107, this is another vaccine. It reported a small increase in median survival and excellent safety with a very long survival tail. For the small group of patients that it helps for a very long time. There's many multi-year survivors. Here's a quote from a recent trial. It showed that 19% of patients had a long-term remission of greater than 8 years. Compare this with what I said before, 5% of the people live 5 years. This is 19% living 8 years, with the longest remission being 9.6 years, and that patient is still alive. 38% of the patients have lived longer than 8 years. And the longest survivor so far is 10.2 years and still alive. And you're talking about a small group of patients. To have this many survivors is incredible. For both types of vaccines, actually for any type of immunotherapy, what they've been showing is the median survivals don't really move too much because it only helps like the 20 to 25% of people who form this tail, but those 20 to 25% of people seem to go on forever. Whereas in almost every other clinical trial, just about everybody's dead by the 2 or 3 year mark. TOCA 511, this is a gene therapy. Again, has good safety record, and it reported a significant increase compared to historical controls in overall survival for recurrent GBM. And there are a few long-term survivors who appear to be cured with no tumor and perfect functioning years after stopping treatment. From their last trial, they said overall survival of recurrent high-grade glioma was 13.6 months, which was statistically improved relative to the external controls. Glialin. This is a dye used during surgery to allow surgeons to better see where the tumor is, which allows more of the tumor to be removed. And when more tumor is removed, it improves survival. And it's been used on over 60,000 patients worldwide with absolute safety. The only side effect it has is photosensitivity for the first 24 hours, which means you're not supposed to go outside in the sun for the first day. Since this is used only during brain tumor surgery, nobody goes outside the first day after brain tumor surgery. It's approved in 33 countries and a standard treatment in Europe. It's absolutely criminal that this is not approved in the United States. MDNA55. This is an immunotherapy which targets IL-4, which is found on about 75% of GBMs. Very little on normal brain cells. They tested it on over 75 patients with no significant toxicities, and they had a 56% response rate, with a long tail where about 20% of people just lived till the end for a long time. Look at HSPPC 96. This is another vaccine that demonstrates how trials can be misleading and even lead to halting the development of useful treatments. This one and the next one both had outstanding data in early trials but failed later stage trials. Each might not show enough effect on the selected endpoints by themselves to consider the trials a success, but they may play a role in combination therapies which may have a huge impact. With this vaccine, in a trial of 46 newly diagnosed patients, they had a median overall survival of 23.8 months compared to 18 months with the standard of care at the time. But they had a few long-term survivors and no significant side effects. And they did find subgroups that did much better, with an average of 44-month survival for patients with low PD-L1 levels. The most recent trial for recurrent GBM failed. It showed no improvement over patients treated with Avastin. But those patients were not selected for this marker and were in worse shape. Under our plan, a community oncologist will be able to look at the data, prescribe the vaccine, and maybe add in a checkpoint inhibitor to address the low PD-L1 levels, with the results being tracked in our registry to see how it performs. Rintega. This is another vaccine against EGFR V3. The results in large trials were outstanding with no significant side effects again. 25% of the recurrent GBM patients were alive after 2 years, compared with none in the control group. That should have been enough to get approval, but it wasn't. The FDA wanted a larger phase 3 trial, but the larger phase 3 trial had problems. Too many people in the control group dropped out, so they had to drop the trial and they started again. So this time, it was a randomized, blinded trial where the control group actually got an injection of an immune stimulant, which is actually part of Integra. Integra is an immune stimulant plus the vaccine. So they basically gave the control group just the immune enhancer, and that had a better outcome than the combination of the vaccine and the immune enhancer. Both of them did better than historical controls, slightly, but the trial was considered a failure, and development of this drug is stopping. I know a few people who were in the original trial who are still alive years down the road. So it does help some people, and this is one of those tools that we need in our toolbox to conduct a rationally constructed combination of therapy. If somebody has high EGFR V3, I would put this vaccine in. Even if it didn't have a huge effect on its own, maybe by hitting the EGFR V3, which is a marker of a very bad type of GBM, it will help. So we think that this should be in our toolbox. There are a few alternatives to our conditional approval. First one is the right to try. 33 states have already enacted the right to try laws, and the President is talking about implementing a national right to try law. This says that a patient can use experimental treatments that have passed a phase 1 trial. It's a good start, however, nobody is observing the results. Each patient's experiences go to waste, and we will not find out if the treatment is safe, if it's working, and how it interacts with other treatments. Our proposal has a virtual trial registry to address this issue. Then we have the accelerated approval, compassionate use, breakthrough therapy, and fast track plans. These FDA programs are good, but they don't go far enough because, as I've shown, there are a few treatments that have shown efficacy in phase 1, 2, and 3 trials, but they're not approved now and they're not available right now. Some of these are actually available theoretically on compassionate use, but in practice we haven't been able to get these treatments on compassionate use. So it failed, and we need a better plan. Then there's the GBM Agile trial, which is a new type of clinical trial. It's basically a screening trial where they try different combinations of drugs against each other. The better ones go on to a regular clinical trial, and the worst ones are just dropped and a new combination is tried. It's a good plan, but it doesn't speed up the total approval process because these combinations still have to go through the traditional pathways to get final approval. Then there's the free-to-choose medicine. This is the best plan out of the whole group. With the free-to-choose medicine, patients can get drugs after phase 1 trial, and they have the registry just like we do. The difference between our plans is they want to use this for any drug for any disease. We want to limit it to those serious diseases where there's really no other treatments. But their plan is acceptable. I feel that if you're dealing with a glioblastoma, you're free to accept a risk that something has a chance of killing you. But if you're trying to treat toenail fungus, you want to be pretty sure that that drug's not going to cause liver cancer. So that's the only way we differ, and we want only serious illnesses to be covered. Then there's the 21st Century Cure Act. This is another way the FDA has of speeding up approvals, but this plan allows them to give an approval based on a lower level of evidence. We don't really like that. We want a higher level of evidence. Our registry will give us a higher level of evidence because it'll show how the drugs react in the average ordinary patient and not those perfectly selected patients that are usually used in trials. The first advances in oncology occurred at a time when there were no regulations. Doctors would have ideas and just put them to work immediately. They adjusted and combined treatments as needed until they were optimized and became standard treatments. Many types of cancer were cured by this work. It's painfully obvious that the way to cure our currently incurable cancers is to use a combinational approach. We probably have the necessary tools in the toolbox today, but we're not allowed to use them. For example, there are reports that by combining vaccines with immune modulators, we can make them much more effective. But we cannot just combine them now, as vaccines are not approved and cannot be obtained outside of trials. Our brain cancer patients do not have the decades to wait for our regulatory system. When faced with certain death, we believe it is acceptable to not have 100% proven safety, and therefore we are requesting a pilot project to test the system on brain cancer, or perhaps any disease with less than a 50% chance of surviving 5 years. These are the people that put the plan together. They represent some of the experts in the field, and they have an enormous amount of experience creating brain tumor clinical trials and brain tumor research. And these people believe that this is the right way to go.